Welcome back. For our last reading of the night, I thank you for hanging in.
Chuck Berry played some sassy guitar licks and conjured up a rhythmic beat that set the music world on fire. It took the likes of Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley to popularize this sound. But pop music has never been the same since the birth of rock and roll. The winner in our next category is into something that's equally as explosive. He calls it funk and roll. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick James.
Hi, this is Ganja, New York, and we're here live from my house on this wonderful 6th Annual R&B Awards, which I'm very proud to say and very proud to be a part of. I'd like to thank the R&B Award Committee for giving Throwing Down the R&B Album of the Year. And I think it's important because rhythm and blues is as important to black people as life itself. And it's the foundation of all music today. So to win an award from your peers is a great thing and a wonderful honor. Making any album, there's always it's not just about Rick James. It's about many, many people. It's about Tom Fly, my engineer. It's about the Stone City Band, my backup group. It's about the Mary Jane Girls who used to sing with me, but now that they're big stars anymore, they're kind of on their own. It's about Motown Records that promote our records and that put up with all the ideas and the concepts that we happen to come up with and the formulation of new ideas that we can put out on the street and that people, of course, get into and makes all of this possible. I would have loved to have been there with you, but I'm at home finishing up the next Stone City Band album. And my mama said I had to watch the dog. No. I'm very happy to win this award. I really don't know really what to say, other than thank you very much from me and my family. That is the Stone City Band family. I'd also like to say hello to Maxie, JoJo, Candy, and Sherry. Those 4 beautiful girls walking around there, and I hope they're being good girls. But I came up while I was sitting here thinking about all this. I sometimes I'm good with words, and sometimes I'm not so good. And right now I really don't feel all that great. But I did happen to come up with a little song here, and I think and this is, I think, in gratitude for the award, and out of sadness that I can't be there. But I need a drummer. I don't think there's a drummer. Oh, okay. Need a drum turnaround. I'd like to thank you from all of my family for sharing and showing your love. Music is something that comes from the heart and it comes from above. Don't you know that? Mary Jane, wanna thank you. Stone City Band, wanna thank you. Boo, 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 boo. I wanna thank you. All the people in my life wanna thank you, yeah. 'Cause you know that we like it. Don't you know that we like winning album of the year? And you know that we like it. Don't you know that we like it winning album of the year? Ooh, baby. Don't you know music is something that comes from the heart? Music is something that will never stop, baby. Music is something that will never disappear. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart from all these years. Man, I want to thank you. Mama, I want to thank you. My little sisters want to thank you. even ganja wants to thank you. Oh, thank you, boo-boo. Thank you, R&B Awards, for the Stone City Band, the Mary Jane Girls, and myself for the R&B Award of the Year.
And now accepting for Rick James, the Mary Jane Girls, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
What I tell you?
Good evening.
Same style.
Good evening. We're very pleased to accept this award for Rick James, and I'm sure he'll be very, very, very happy to receive it. On behalf of Rick James, Stone City Band family, we thank you very much. Congratulations, Rick.
Okay, now, all right, now, as you can see, one of my neighbors is having some BM issues, it sounds like, and I don't mean bowel movement. That would be just as bad, probably, but so I'm going to try to push through this here. Maybe it's the proper background for Rick James, but let's go ahead and now watch. People going to be trying to listen. I know how y'all do. Let me. Yes, indeed. It did seem like some twinning with what's her name? I forget her name. The lead singer of the Mary Jane Girls, ironically, had the same Egyptian braid hairstyle that he did, right? Okay, so all right. So now let's get to Glow. No, I said problems. I didn't say they was resolving problems. They're having problems over there cussing and fussing. And it's loud enough where folks with a real good ear or reception is real clear can hear it. Okay, let me get to Rick. Thank you, Lord, for quieting them down. Okay. I wish y'all could hear some of these Dwight beats, boy. Oh, man, get out of here. To continue, you need the latest Playbooks app. Okay, can I install it right quick? Lord, have mercy this evening. Okay. How come I cannot install it? Okay, let me try another device here. I'm about to try to pull it up. Hold on one second, y'all. If I could pull it right up on my phone. I'm sorry, I just knew we wouldn't have no problem. My apologies. Okay. Yeah, once I got quiet, I figured you would hear it. Okay, I'm trying to. It's not letting me install Playbooks app. Lord have mercy. Oh, boy. I wonder, could I switch devices? So I'm going to try to do, okay, I'm going to try to do something surgical here. Okay, let me see. Yeah. Hold on, folks. Hold on. Okay. Okay, can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Check one, check two. Can you hear me? Okay, all right. Well, let's jump to it. Okay? Let's jump to it. All right. Here we go. Here it is. All right. Ricky James Matthews, a.k.a. Little Ricky. All right, here we go. Malcolm had planted the seed some months before. He had taken me to lunch at a little Chinese restaurant just over the Peace Bridge in Fort Erie, Canada. Canada's different, Malcolm told me. Canada doesn't have the heavy racist history of America. Canada doesn't have the military ambition or arrogance of America. Canada's laid back. Canada's dull, I said. I've been going over to Canada for years, sometime to play music, sometime to score dope. When the Canadians want action, they come over here. That's changing. Montreal's gotten hip. So has Toronto. If push comes to shove, don't overlook Canada. You can go to Canada and be cool. The thought of ducking out of the Navy had been on my mind ever since I went to the base in the Great Lakes. I knew, though, that would turn me into a criminal and have the law on my tail. I also knew that if I became a deserter, it might break my mother's heart. Once it became clear that I was being shipped overseas, I figured I'd just grin and bear it, except I couldn't. Everything in me screamed in protest. I was not going off to this effing stupid war. So Canada became the escape, and close by Toronto, a mere $25 bus ride from Rochester became the destination. For the umpteenth time, Brother Malcolm pushed me in the right direction. What if that's that man's real name? During the 3-hour bus ride, paranoia started to build. I started imagining that the Navy had already sent their police force after me. I knew they had no jurisdiction in Canada. But what if there was some new treaty that let them pick AWOL cats off the street anywhere in the world? I was getting myself crazy. I had to calm down, or I'd have a nervous breakdown. By the time the bus arrived in Toronto, I had talked myself into a reasonable state of mind. It was the spring of 1964. I was 16 years old, and even though the city stood only 100 miles from Buffalo, it might have been a million. I felt like I was on another planet. Canada was way more chilled out than the uptight USA. Folks were friendlier. Whites seemed less leery of blacks. My shoulders and neck shot through with tension during the ride north began to relax. I took a deep breath and sighed. No one was looking for me. I didn't need to stress. I wasn't totally broke. I did have a little money in my pocket. I passed by a newsstand that displayed a paper that said the World's Fair was opening in New York. That reminded me that Malcolm had told me that Yorkville was the Greenwich Village of Toronto. If you get to Canada, he said, head straight for Yorkville. It's where the crazy artists hang out. You'll feel right at home. I found my way to Yorkville, my little sailor bag still over my shoulder, and liked what I saw. Coffee houses, record shops, jazz clubs, strip bars. Just when I felt how great it was to be out of racist Western New York, 3 men came up to me with thick Buffalo accents. They were in civilian clothes and obviously drunk. "You ain't one of them AWOL niggers, are you?" I was about to slug him when his friends came right at me. I wasn't sure I could handle all 3, but then again I didn't have to. A trio of 3 other white guys saw what was happening and came running to my aid. Just like that, it was on, and the drunk a-holes went down, down, down. I thanked my saviors. "I'm James Johnson," I said. "I'm Pat McGraw," said the cat who threw the best punches. "These are my friends Garth Hudson and Levon Helm. They're musicians." "I'm a musician," I said. "We play with Ronnie Hawkins. Ever heard of him?" asked Garth. I hadn't. "We're his backup band," said Levon. "We're the Hawks. You got to come by and hear us." I wanted to. Later, I remember this encounter when Garth, Levon, and their colleagues Robbie Robertson, Rick Danko, and Richard Manuel backed up Bob Dylan and later got famous as the band. We went for coffee. Garth and Levon were beautiful cats, deep into music. We talked about Muddy Waters and Cannonball Adderley. Their taste was as wide as mine. When they left for rehearsal, they scribbled down their numbers on the back of a matchbook. Meanwhile, Pat McGraw was eager to keep hanging. "Look, man," he said, "if you're AWOL, that raises my respect. Anyone who tells the Army to F off is cool with me." "How about the Navy?" "F 'em all," said Pat McGraw. "Let's go get F'd up." He took me to an underground coffee house called El Patio, where in the back room we smoked. It felt great, like a weight lifted off my shoulders. "Band's coming on," said Pat. "Let's stay and listen." I was ready. I was glad the band played R&B. The musicians weren't bad, but the singer really couldn't hack it. Pat saw the look on my face and asked, "Think you can do better?" "No, I can," I said. "Well, get your A up there and try." Nick St. Nicholas. Wink. Nick St. Nicholas, the band leader, was willing. "You know Stand By Me?" I asked. "What key?" "E." "Hit it." I hit it hard, and 4 minutes later everyone was up and screaming for me. "You can sing," said Nick. He was a bass player, a blond cat with high cheekbones and kind eyes. "Here's my number. Call me." Everyone was handing out numbers. Aside from the nigger haters who tried to punch me out, everyone in Toronto was looking out for me. "You better crash at my pad," said Pat, "until you get some paying gigs. The way you wailing, it won't be long." And you know, I did not think that was Rick James' strong point. I thought he was a mediocre singer at best. He could have been on the struggle voice funk all-star team. But his playing, especially being self-taught, it is certainly an indication of great talent. But anyhow, and of course his arrangement and songwriting. He said, "Turned out that Pat was a rounder, the Canadian term for hustler. So we spoke the same language. On the street, everyone knew Pat. At his crib, his chick Shirley, a sister, was waiting for him. She was a singer herself, foxy and sweet. "Who are you, honey?" she asked when I walked through the door with Pat. "I'm James." "James is AWOL," said Pat, "and he's a singing MFer." "If you AWOL," said Shirley, "you best change your name." "That's right," Pat chimed in. "We'll call you Rick. Ricky James Matthews. That's my cousin's name. He's dead, so he won't mind." And that's a whole different story than what I've heard him tell in another interview. Interesting. I didn't mind. New town, new identity. First night I slept on Pat's couch. Next morning, he say, "First night, man, if you don't want to talk to her, just hang up the phone." I don't understand that. What y'all still talking for? You got to talk like that loud? Both of y'all's crazy. You deserve each other. We'll call you Ricky James Matthews. That's my cousin's name. He's dead, so he won't mind. I didn't mind. New town, new identity. First night I slept on Pat's couch. Next morning I called Nick. "You serious about me singing with you?" I asked. "Serious as sin. Come on over now." A week later, the Sailor Boys were born out of deep irony. We used my Navy-issued clothes, all I had, as uniforms. We switched them up and made them funky, but the look was unmistakably Navy. Our sound was unmistakably R&B. We covered everyone from the Isleys to Smokey and the Miracles. My voice was big enough where I could sing Walter Jackson, Bobby Blue Bland, or Ray Charles. Not only that, but I'd picked up the harmonica and had a one-man act I called Little Ricky. Soon, fans of the Sailor Boys would show up wearing bell-bottoms and sailor caps. We started a fad to hear us sing harmony tight as the Beach Boys. Then on one night a week, at that same club, different fans would come to see Little Ricky blow harp like Little Walter or Sonny Boy Williamson. Toronto was a music-loving town. Toronto also turned out to be a place where I did some careful studying and listening. For the first time, I found myself smack in the middle of a community of white artists who were deadly serious about making music true to their souls. I saw Joni Mitchell in little clubs, playing her guitar and singing her life experience songs. She'd come to hear me as well, and was always encouraging. Same thing was true of Kenny Rogers, David Clayton Thompson, Gordon Lightfoot, and Neil Young. Every one of these cats respected the African American musical traditions. They drew from it, and they let me know I was a part of it. At the same time, they taught me about the white folk tradition. Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan. I loved it all and felt like I was in the hippest college in the world. They played me Laura Nyro records while I played them Ornette Coleman. They played me Laura Nyro records while I played them Ornette Coleman. They introduced me to Elmore James and Robert Johnson while I introduced them to Joe Tex and Pharoah Sanders. The all-night jams had my brain working overtime. The other music we were listening to, of course, was the stuff from England. In the middle of the 60s, British invasion, Canada, a part of the British Commonwealth, was crazy over the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, and the Dave Clark Five. The only thing saving American music was Motown. Whoop, whoop. In fact, the English groups even covered Motown songs. As far as I was concerned, I could do it all and it was all good. Turned out, though, that Nick was something of a slippery cat. He started gigging behind our back with a group called Jack London and the Sparrows. Dave Martin, known as Jack, was from Liverpool, but the other guys weren't English at all. They faked the accent and the look, and lo and behold, got a record deal on Capitol and a pop hit, If You Don't Want My Love. People around me were starting to make serious money. Ice Mountain. Okay. When Nick left us for greener pastures, we recruited a super bad bass player named Bruce Palmer. Bruce brought the funk. Later in life, he went big time with Buffalo Springfield. Goldie McJohn was on organ. We were feeling big time ourselves, selling out clubs all over town and making $400 a night. Well, the hash was plentiful, and so was the amyl nitrate. We were smoking and sniffing nearly every night. I was stoked. I'd come to Toronto with $25 in my pocket. Now I had hundreds, a place of my own, and a name known all around Yorkville. I'd proven that my talent was all I needed. The me monster was growing strong. Your band's strong, but it can be a lot stronger, said Colin Kerr, a cat from England who wanted to be Brian Epstein. You can explode out of Toronto the way the Beatles exploded out of Liverpool. I was impressed by this kind of big-time talk. How you going to pull it off? I asked Colin. Come down to my shop and you'll see. Colin had a coffee house called the Minor Bird at Yorkville in Hazleton. That was his inspiration for the band name. Before Colin, we dressed like regulation hippies, bell-bottom, psychedelic patterned shirts, wild hair, little round purple glasses. Colin changed all that. You need a different look, he said. You need your own look. So we put together outfits with yellow turtleneck sweaters, tight black leather pants, leather jackets, and yellow boots. Colin didn't change our music all that much. We were basically still an R&B band, but he did change the way we got attention. Gentlemen, said Colin, it'll take more than music to get the press we need. We're going to take a page out of Sinatra's playbook. Colin explained how in the 40s, Sinatra's press agent hired teenage girls to scream at his appearances. The commotion made news. You're going to take a shopping trip through Eaton's, the biggest department store in town. That's going to make news, which is just what happened. Colin had girls chasing after us as we tried to shop at Eaton's. They screamed our name and tore off our clothes. That's how the game is ran. As we ran to the safety of our rented limo. The next day, the Minor Birds were all over the papers. Rock group causes riot. Girls go nuts. And all this without a record. We gone to see A Hard Day's Night, the Beatles movie, and suddenly I was living it. For a while, I was loving it. Who didn't want to be chased down by a gang of girls? For the most part, the girls were white and none of them seemed prejudiced. Actually, the opposite was true. As the black lead singer of the white minor birds, I stood out. Ever since I'd been in Toronto, going on 2 years now, I'd stood out. I was an authentic R&B singer living in a city where white musicians were striving to play authentic R&B. That added to my status. It also got me laid. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't curious to taste some in all its wonderful flavors. The white stuff was a new treat for me, and I gorged myself as much as I could. Reflecting back, I got to say that before Toronto, I hadn't thought much about sex outside my race. It just wasn't an issue. I was a product of Black Buffalo and had no complaints about black women. Still don't. But most brothers of my generation were curious about white women. Just as I'd guessed many white guys wanted a taste of chocolate. The grass is always greener. When I first scored white women in Canada, it was a novelty. Stretched out in bed after a hot session, seeing my dark skin next to the whiteness of a beautiful lady was a novelty and a kick. After a while, though, the novelty wore off and I stopped discriminating. I quickly learned that good women, like true love, isn't restricted to one group or another. The Minor Birds was a group definitely geared to white girls. In that sense, I dug the fantasy of being John Lennon, Paul McCartney, or Mick Jagger. I dug how my musical flexibility allowed me to be a part of a Canadian concocted British invasion group. They was faking the funk. Only one guy actually had a real British accent. I also dug the possibility of the group taking off and making millions. Jagger was my man. The Stones had a harder edge than the Beatles, and with the Minor Birds, I sang a lot of the Stones' early hits like Get Off My Cloud and Satisfaction. Much as I admired Jagger for his swagger, he was a white cat trying to sing black. I didn't have to try. I am black, and so when people started saying they liked my versions of the Stones songs better than the originals, I wasn't surprised. As my life went through these amazing changes, I thought back to what Brother Malcolm Ernie said about that glow that he saw shining inside me. When I got to Canada, that glow got me through. It came out in my music. People saw it and liked it. The glow got all over them. Be careful, don't get none of this glow on you. The glow got all over them, and they told other people about it. Right? And they told others about it. Word got out that Little Ricky could blow harmonica and wail some mean blues. Word got out that Ricky James Matthews was fronting the Sailor Boys and singing up a storm. Then this same guy was causing a commotion with the Minor Birds. I wrote Mom that all my dreams were coming true, that my musical talent was real and getting realer every day. I wanted to visit her as soon as possible. She wrote back saying that the FBI was looking for me and to stay where I was. The cats I was playing with didn't know I was AWOL, and I was careful to keep it that way. I wasn't much for future planning. I was, am, and will always be an improviser. I made up my life the same way I was making up my songs, on the spot. If I thought too far ahead, I'd get worried, and worry wasn't conducive to creativity. I was all about creativity. Now with the creation of the Minor Birds, I felt myself on the brink of a breakthrough. I wanted fortune and fame, and I just knew that they were right around the corner. No mistake about it. I couldn't be wrong. Or could I? Or could I? And there's your 30 minutes of Rick James. Let's see, wait a minute. And there's Big Nephew Dr. J in the place to stay. Brother Jarvis Kingston in the house. Good to see you. Well, thank you. I was trying to edit. Encore. Okay, all right. A little bit more. My time. Wait a minute. You can't skip to that like that, right? 78. 79. Okay. I don't understand why it's... Okay, you got to remember this is written by Rick James. Now he already told you he don't like to plan stuff out now. So check it out. And if you remember, David Ritz said some of the stuff's going to be out of place. So here we go. This is the next chapter. And yes, you may, big sister Vanette. In my time in prison, Brother Guru and I continue to have some deep talks. This chapter is called My Time. In my time in prison, Brother Guru and I continue to have some deep talks. The other day, he was accusing me of being cocky. Only a man like Brother Guru, who I respect so much, could get away with saying something like that. Well, if I wasn't cocky, I wouldn't have gotten where I am, I said. And where are you, Brother Rick? You're in jail. I mean, my music career wouldn't have happened if I wasn't a confident MFer. Big difference, said Brother Guru, between confident and cocky. I don't see the difference. That's why you landed in prison. Confidence is moving ahead with a calm conviction that your God-given talent will see you through. Cockiness is when you start believing that nothing and no one can stop you. In 1965, a 17-year-old wrapped up in the explosive music scene in Toronto, I couldn't help but be cocky. I was moving up so fast and furiously that I really didn't think that anything could hold me back. That's the attitude that led me to break away from Colin Kerr, my first real manager. Colin had the Minor Birds practicing for months before he took us to the studio. I was impatient. I was ready to rock. I was writing songs that I thought would smash hits. But Colin's brother had songs of his own. Those were the songs that Colin insisted we record. The Minor Bird Hop and the Minor Bird Song. To me, they were jive. Because Colin was paying the bills, he got his way. After we cut the tunes, Colin sent us to do a teeny bopper TV show in Hamilton, Ontario. I was excited. The studio was filled with screaming girls, all hired by Colin, all hired by the manager. And as a gimmick, I was supposed to sing to a blind minor bird. Oh my goodness. I went along with the program. I let them put the bird in my hand as I sang this dumb A song. The girls loved it, but I didn't. Especially when the bird started crapping in my hand. When I tried to push him off, he dug his claws into my skin. With S and blood all over me, I nearly bolted. Somehow I got through the song. Somehow I got through 4 minor bird shows at the Colonnade Theater. The girls were screaming so loud I couldn't even hear myself sing. This is BS, I told the guys in the band. The music is BS, the act is BS, and the little money we getting is BS. I said we burn these Jive 8 costumes and tell Colin to F himself. The guys agreed. We left Colin and kept the name Minor Birds but changed our look. We went back to the far-out hippie image that was closer to our true character. We also changed our music, the result of something that happened when I went down to New York City and heard what was happening in the folk scene of Greenwich Village. I was reluctant to leave Canada because of my AWOL situation, but a new friend of mine, Morley Shellman, told me not to worry. He was rich enough to buy me out of any legal hassle. Morley was gay, but knowing that I wasn't, felt uncomfortable mentioning it. I couldn't have cared less. I have prejudices, but homophobia is not one of them. I know. We could tell by the cover of Lucy's rap. When we got to New York, a limo was waiting for us. Seated inside was Sal Mineo, Morley's best friend and obvious lover. Mineo had some killer grass, and we got blasted immediately. I was buzzed, not only on the weed, but on the fact that I was meeting my first movie star. I'd seen Mineo with James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause at least 3 times. It was one of my favorite flicks. I'd also seen him in The Gene Krupa Story, where he played the great swing drummer. In that movie, Krupa gets busted for pot, and there we were in the limo talking about that while getting blasted on fat joints. Sal had also learned to play drums for that film, so we could talk drummer to drummer. I was surprised that he was familiar with bebop drummers like Kenny Clark and Connie Kay of the Modern Jazz Quartet. Sal Mineo was one hip cat. We settled into the apartment of Morley's parents on Park Avenue. They had one whole floor of the building. When the elevator opened, you weren't in a hallway, you were in their crib. Never had seen that before. Also, never had seen so much cocaine. In those days, it was pure. One line could take off the back of your head. Morley had a small attaché case filled with blow that went with us as we hit the clubs in the village. "You like this coke?" he asked the three of us, Morley, me, and Mineo. He asked as the three of us, Morley, me, and Mineo, rode in the back of the limo, heading down to the Night Owl Cafe on MacDougal Street. "It's good," I said, "but I'm mainly a weed man. Coke really isn't my thing." Oh, how time would change things. Like it always does. Time and chance. At that point, I should have added, "at least not yet," but I couldn't see the future. All I could see was a line of hardcore hippies waiting to get in to see the Lovin' Spoonful. Morley knew the club owner and got us right in. I dug everything I heard. Later in life, when I told writers that the Lovin' Spoonful was one of the groups that influenced me most, they thought I was kidding. I wasn't. John Sebastian was a great harp player. He knew the black masters and became a master himself. John and his cats, Joe Butler on drums, Zal Yanofsky on guitar, and Steve Boone on bass, had this acoustic electric mix of folk, blues, and rock that knocked me out. It felt fresh. I love songs like "Do You Believe in Magic" and "Summer in the City." After their first set, we hung out for a long time and exchanged ideas. My ego got pumped when they said people coming back from Toronto were talking about me. I dug the Spoonful so much that I went to see them 2 more times before Morley and I said goodbye to Sal Mineo and flew back to Canada. Couldn't wait to tell Bruce Palmer about the Lovin' Spoonful and the new direction I envisioned for the Minor Birds. Bruce was already hip to blues-based folk rock, and he suggested we get this guitarist who could help us with that sound, his friend, Neil Young. "He's staying over at Joni Mitchell's place," said Bruce. "I'll take you to meet him." Joni was famous for letting musicians crash at her pad directly over the Purple Onion Coffee House. She and I had a great relationship. It wasn't sexual, but musical as a MFer. Joni was a brilliant lyricist and also a student of jazz. You could talk to her about Monk and Mingus. She and I sat up all night listening to Miles' sketches of Spain. On another night, we were digging Mahler and Mozart. Joni was the first one to play me Mose Allison, and I remember teaching her Horace Silver's Juicy Lucy. Joni had killer taste, so if she recommended a musician, the way she and Bruce were recommending Neil Young, that was all the assurance I needed. Neil was cool. He had a quirky sense of humor and a quick mind. Like most of the other white musicians in Toronto, he was into black music. His singing was a little strange, but his facility on the guitar was crazy. He got all over those strings and showed me some stuff I'd never seen before. Neil helped reshape the Minor Birds into the band I'd been hearing inside my head. Like John Sebastian, Neil bridged folk, blues, and rock in a format that didn't sound artificial. It sounded real. He was the missing ingredient. Like most bands, the personnel of the Minor Birds kept changing, but the basic group, me, Nick St. Nicholas, Bruce Palmer, Neil Young, and Gordy McJohn, came together at the right time, and on the right night, the right man came to hear us. By happenstance. That man was John Craig Eaton. His family owned Eaton's department store. Morley Shellman brought him to the club, I thought so. I thought he would say that. Morley and John were 2 rich kids in love with music. A product of his upbringing, John was a conservative, but after a few weeks of partying with the Minor Birds, he loosened up. I could see he was toying with the idea of walking on the wild side. Morley saw the same thing. I was surprised when the 2 of them came to me with an idea. "I want to manage the Minor Birds," said Morley. and I want to produce you, said John. If by produce, I said, you mean you'll put up the money, I'm cool with that. That's just what happened. Within a few days, John had brought us that's called executive producing. You know that, right? Swiss Beats is a producer. He makes beats. Sean Puffy Combs is an executive producer. He don't have to touch a beat machine. He paid for the songs to get made. If you look on NWA Straight Outta Compton album, Eazy-E is the executive producer. He paid for it. He didn't touch a beat machine. Dr. Dre is the producer. Okay, that's just what happened. Within a few days, John had bought us thousands of dollars worth of new instruments and equipment and invited us to rehearse in his mansion. It was like a European palace. I was operating in a different sphere, musically and romantically as well. I'd met this chick named Elk. Okay. I'd met this chick named Elk, who had me loving on her so hard I found myself doing something the boys back in Buffalo Hood swore they'd never do. You can figure out the rest. I don't know why, but my generation of black men had an attitude that it was the woman who did the sucking, not the man. Elk didn't see it that way. She was going to get good as she gave. And believe me, man, she gave plenty good. At first, I wasn't sure. The experience of actually was new and strange. But when I saw her wild reaction and realized the power of the pleasure I was giving her, I gave even more. Elk taught me pleasing a woman is as pleasurable as getting pleased yourself. Meanwhile, on the business front, our rich backers were eager to please us. They'd been coming to our rehearsals and watching our shows. They were sure we were ready for the big time and wanted to land us a deal. I thought we needed a bit more. Neil and I had just started writing together, and while our songs were good, I was sure that in a few more weeks, they'd be great. Neil had this machine gun style on the guitar that inspired melodies and lyrics out of me. Sometimes he'd be so into his solos he wouldn't even realize that his guitar had come unplugged. When I finally felt we had it together, I told John and Morley to bring the record company execs to hear us in Toronto. We're going one better than that, said Morley. We're taking you to Detroit. Motown wants to hear you. Is Motown right for me? I asked. Motown's all black. Motown's crossover soul music, and we're in the middle of the white rock mix. Motown's all about money, said John. I've talked to Berry Gordy, and he's dying to get into rock. He loves the idea of a white rock band with a black lead. I got us an audition for next week. I was game. I was ready to meet the cats who made Marvin Gaye. I was ready to meet Marvin himself. Bring on Smokey and the Miracles. The Minor Birds would be Motown's next miracle. And I'm stopping right there. That's it. That's it. I can remember. So when we pick it up, he's on his way to Detroit. How about that? Yeah, this is Rick James, the Super Freak. I'm doing the best I can. Trying to change a hard R book into PG-13. Okay? Prince X, ready to meet the cats that made Marvin, wait for it, Gaye. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. And they helped point Rick in the right direction, too. I do believe, although I'm already hearing some things here that make him sound a little suspicious already. So yeah, y'all remember, he about to go to Detroit. So the next lines I am to read are on the way to Detroit. That's the next lines, on the way to Detroit. You remember? Okay, I'm going to try to turn this thing around. Y'all can see. Let me see. Let's see here. Okay. Hey. All right. There we go. Thank you, Errol Card. I'm glad you remember. All right, so that was good for tonight. And so we'll pick up right there on the way to Detroit. Amen. And I'm ready to say good night until I see you all again. I'm glad that folks enjoyed it. Enjoy the reading. It gives us a chance to just kind of let our hair down a little bit. But I mean, you talking about Rick James, letting your hair down a little bit is not an option. He gonna take your wig off. So it's what I expect. So I think that I'm going to clear the air with a little bit of funk. Okay. Low battery on the iPad. I forgot to have it plugged in. Okay, good night to everybody. I love y'all. Remember the lesson that we learned tonight about the cross.
Down at the cross. Down at the cross. I saw the light. Oh, the blood of my heart. They rolled away, y'all. They rolled away. You know what? It was there. By faith. Oh, y'all, I receive my sight. But let me tell you one more thing. I can't Jesus. Oh, just as I was. Just as I was. I was weary. God won't.
I think him and Prince had dark and light skin issues. Look at Satan's children. They just be tussling with each other. Pusha T, devilish as he could be. This flow is 666. He been with that. And him and his brothers playing a hermetic game. And so it's devils versus devils. Some devils try to play the role of the right-hand path. So they can sing songs like Stay Woke and reinvent themselves. There's no malice. But I'm glad somebody's taking down Drake. I'm glad the powers that be is tired of him. But who knows what they're going to put in his place.
A long time ago, a man called Jesus was teaching along the sea, in the valley and in the temple. The lessons he taught were very simple.
Chocolate E, let's ride. If you go to the community section, it's in there. And all you gotta do is just click on the link. I copied and pasted directly from her email into the community section. Thank you for your efforts. I'm about to step away. I love y'all. See you Wednesday unless I come and surprise y'all on Monday.
Came down from above to teach us how to love. Here's another thing he taught. He taught love your enemies. Yes, he did. Bless them that curse you. Don't go. Do good to those that hate you. And pray for those that use you. Here's what we're talking about. Listen. We're talking about love. Nothing but love. A precious kind of love. A long time ago, a man called Jesus was misunderstood and hung on a cross. Jesus died for us all. But listen, but wipe the tears from your eyes. Lord, Jesus sure did rise. Yes, he did. And went on to glory. Listen, but that was a long
Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for supporting. I appreciate you, each and every one of you. God bless you. And we'll talk again soon. Shalom.
and strategy and lies. You will need the breastplate of righteousness, where the shoes of good news and the strong belt of truth. Yeah, love. For we are not in battle against flesh and blood, but against evil rulers of the unseen world. Oh, put on the whole now. Come on now. Oh, yeah. Have you stand with the devil. Yeah. Defeat all restrictions, strategies, and lies. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to use the shield of faith and the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Oh, put on the whole line. You got to put it on. Come on now. Oh, Lord. Sweet tongue doesn't have a chance with our lives. It doesn't have a chance, no. God's gonna protect us from his fight. From his fight, yeah.
see y'all Wednesday.
I'd like to take your mind back to the 3rd chapter in the book of Acts.
If not Monday.
2 men were walking along one day, came to a gate where a lame man lay. The man looked at Peter and John. The Bible said to get some on.